Well,
Well, what?
you read the examiner's report,
Twice.
so what do you make of it?
Same thing you should. More supernatural crap. Not sure if your buddy Spawn had anything to do with it, but whatever ripped through those podcasters wasn't being too careful.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography. I'm one of your hosts, Pierce Leiden, pronouns they, them, here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her. How the living heck are you, my dear friend Pierce?
doing all right. Had a busy weekend, moving in with my partner, and we're both doing a lot of packing. I've been living in the same place for almost 3 years, and I have not unpacked a lot of things because it's not my house that I live in currently. It's a family house. And so today, or this weekend, I kind of started digging into stuff and being like, okay, what have I not looked at in 3 years? And do I need it?
Right.
And when you don't even open a box for 3 years, you kind of go, well, I could clearly live without it because I didn't interact with it. But it's, for me, it's mostly books, some toys and stuff, but mostly books. But I promised, it's my first time living with a partner in my life. I've had roommates, obviously, but not somebody I'm dating. So there's more compromises that need to be made about the amount of things that will be in living spaces, to put it kindly. And so I put a free box out with a bunch of comics, and mostly stuff that I either had like doubles of, or I was like, oh, I'm never going to read Dan Slott's She-Hulk again, so I can just kind of give that away. Or like, oh, I have an omnibuy of this now, I don't need this trade or whatever. And I give away some toys, a Harley Quinn, Joker, Mad Love, Mattel, DC Universe adult collectors
cool.
edition, which is cool. McFarlane ended up putting out the same toy a few years ago, but that and like some anime toys from like Assassination Classroom and My Hero Academia, a Wolverine piggy bank. But other than that, the kids in the neighborhood, I guess, or the adults, I suppose, have taken all the toys. They've taken some of the comics. They took like Grant Morrison Doom Patrol. They took some Flash and Green Lantern stuff. So I don't care as long as it doesn't have to come with me to my next place.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
A few years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I think at this point, on Free Comic Book Day one year, I did a giveaway at my house, a Free Comic Book Day event at my house, where I put up flyers all over the neighborhood and shit, like free comics, this date, this address. Another guy came down from another part of the neighborhood and put some of his stuff out. And I gave away like a couple thousand comics.
Hell yeah.
Of just like stuff that I was never going to read again, didn't care. But I went through all of it. I still have more than enough long boxes and trades and everything. But like, it was really fun seeing all the kids show up, and like a lot of adults would show up with their kids and be like, wow, I didn't even know they still made comic books and stuff like that. It was enlightening to know that like legitimately a lot of people are like, wait, there's comic stores around, stuff like that. Man, speaking of which, God, true tragedy. And I'm not joking. Bizarro Wuxtry, Athens, like beloved, iconic comic and like everything store is apparently closing, and they're trying to sell everything to someone to keep it going. And it's like legitimately a tragedy. It's been there for 50 years. The same guy's been running it since the 90s. it's just an amazing piece of our history, both culturally as comic fans, because it has a legacy where it's been depicted in comics
Yeah,
by
yeah,
people and paid tribute in comics. And I mean, I've been going there for 20 years at this point, off and
yeah.
on.
Well, sounds like you know what you must do.
God, I wish if I had money or credit, I would waste my life on that. You have no idea. But it's just a tragedy, and they are trying to find someone who can maybe help keep it going. But honestly, it's a big, it is part of the effect of the, of big business and big business oriented mayor that we had for a long time. So years and years and years ago, they wanted to put a Walmart
Mm.
in our like downtown area, not far from like where, our Athens downtown
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And there was this huge push to not have that happen. And so we essentially fought back, and the downtown Walmart, as it was going to be called, was canceled. But then the mayor, because they were so fucking angry about us canceling the Walmart, basically opened up all the real estate to like corporate real estate owners. And
Yeah.
so slowly
Private equity.
over the last few years, it's all been replaced by like American Eagle and shit. And we used to have we used to have an arcade. We used to
Yeah.
have, it was one of the best places to go. It was a vintage arcade, and they had an amazing jukebox, and like they sold snacks. It was not a bar. It was not a drinking place, but it was the perfect place to go on a date, or if you didn't drink, or
To just
before
hang
or
out. Yeah.
after you went drinking. Because yeah, it was just vintage games. You'd pay for like a pass, you get a wristband, you could come and go. Did you go with us out to that arcade? Like, I think you did.
I think I did. Yeah.
When you visited.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
one that used to be in Athens, and now I think it's closed altogether. It moved like an hour away to a cheaper spot, but like just
Yeah.
slowly everything's been priced out and forced out, and it sucks. It's part of, I'm a little tired of the phrase and shitification, but like that's
It
what it
is.
is. It is just the corporatization of everything. And
Yeah.
I'll rant economically for 1 second and just say the corporations and the people at the top of them just want a world where they don't have products, they don't have customers, they don't have employees, they just have AI programs sending numbers back and forth, compiling what they view as wealth. And that won't do anything bad for anyone. It'll be just diamonds and jewels forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we deal with all the time. I mean, New York obviously deals with this constantly, and the hope is that
Oh yeah, under
we're
your socialist hellscape Mamdana stan.
yeah, but like the hope is that this will be slowed down by progressive politicians that are able to sort of like actually take a stand and not try to become like a citizen of Albania, like our last mayor, and
Try to like actually wield the levers of power for something that
yeah.
empowers people.
I mean, we've talked about it before. A lot of
Yeah.
Zoran's whole thing is like, there's a button that says like everything won't be bad. It's crazy that nobody's pushed it, like
yeah,
and,
that's yeah.
But even we're dealing with the recent thing was a Sex in the City cafe. Did I tell you about this already?
No.
Carrie's Corner Cafe opened in Ridgewood, and it took the place of like a pretty beloved little coffee shop that was only okay. I think people like the sandwiches more than they like the coffee. But
sure, but also
really
it's a neighborhood spot that people liked.
Exactly. And like it was there for a decent amount of time, not like forever. It wasn't like here before the flood or whatever, but it had been around, and people had grown to really love it, and it closed. Not for anything other than they got priced out of it and ended up closing, but it got taken over by these two kind of conservative, like early 30s women who opened a Sex and the City themed cafe in the same spot. And so you can get a Mr. Biggs tossed salad, and you can get a sex tea. And it's just like, this just sucks. Not only because one, Sex and the City is not relevant to human beings in 2026.
I mean, you would be so surprised.
I guess so, but we don't live in fucking Kansas. Like, these are women who like are born
they
and
also
raised
did the
in
sequel
Ridgewood,
series.
No, I
that
know,
was
and that's all she wrote. I don't know.
I don't fucking care. As you said, it's not 1999 or whatever. My Chemical Romance has already broken up and reunited.
But the good thing about it being somewhat like 1999 here in New York is that the Knicks are up 2-0 in the NBA Finals. And the last time they were in the finals was 1999. I will say I did go to I went to finals game 1. My buddy Dan, he got a table at a bar that another friend of ours bartends at. And when I tell you, I got there early. I got there like 7:45. Tip off was 8:30. Already like busy. Like it's taken you 10 minutes to get a bartender's attention and you're standing at the bar because they're so busy. We got like a tiny little table right next to the bar, which kind of worked out because we were able to flag kind of passing bartenders and be like, bucket, please fill our bucket with beers.
Right.
It is awesome being in a bar full of New Yorkers watching the Knicks. And by the time this episode comes out, we will know if they win or lose. But I will say it fucking ruled. I was hoarse for like 2 days just from yelling. And like, I don't know. I know we technically have 2 basketball teams, but we have like 2 teams in every sport. So most of the time, like Yankees are in the World Series. Sure, you got to go to a Yankees bar, though. You can't just go to any bar. You got to go to a Yankees bar, right?
I remember one year when I came up for Comic-Con, it was the Yankees in the World Series, and we went to a bar for that. And that was like Halloween in a frat bar.
Yeah. But even still, there's still always going to be some people like, well, I'm a Mets fan, so, fuck the Yankees, whatever. And it's been really funny because my brother is not really a sports fan in general. He mostly plays. He mostly follows hockey. And we were talking. I was like, dude, this is like the best because the only time New York comes together because nobody cares about the Brooklyn Nets. They're really a New Jersey team as far as we're concerned. And he's like, yeah, but like, I was like, why are you? He's like, this is the most basketball I've ever watched in my life. And I was like, yeah, you don't really like basketball. How's that been? And he's like, well, you got to cheer for New York. And I was like, no, you don't. And he goes, you're telling me if the Rangers were in the Stanley Cup, you wouldn't root for the Rangers because Stanley Cup's going on right now too. And I was like, fuck no, I wouldn't. I'm an Islanders fan. And he's like, that's fucked up, bro. I was like, ask Dan when he gets here because he's an Islanders fan too. Dan sits down. He goes, Dan, if the Rangers were in the Stanley Cup right now, would you root for them? He goes, fuck that. And I was like, right, because we would have to deal with it the whole time. And that's the other thing. Like, there's no such thing as a New York fan. I'm not a fan of the state. Most of the state sucks.
Right. Well, anyway, here in Georgia, we're part of the SEC in Athens, Georgia, the University of Georgia, the Southeastern Conference, which is one of the most contentious college football conferences. And it is the same way with, like, say, Georgia Tech is our big rival. That's in Atlanta.
Okay.
And every year there's a big game between UGA and Tech, and it's just like such a huge thing. It's that same thing where like no one who's a Georgia Tech fan is gonna be like, oh, I'm glad the Bulldogs are in the playoffs, they're in the finals, and they have been. They won 2 years in a row, like 23 and 24 or something.
A historically good team. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. For years, for about a whole season, I worked at a UGA memorabilia store, and boy, I could go on about that for a long time because it was a weird experience. Speaking of experiences, I will say we might have talked about it before. I did see Masters of the Universe this weekend.
We talked about it a little bit off mic. I haven't seen it yet, but what'd you think? You're a He-Man head.
I fucking loved it. I mean, look, it was everything I wanted it to be, meaning it was like a fun kind of family adventure movie. I was able to just kind of live in a fantasy and have fun for a while, and it had a bunch of Masters of the Universe eye candy. And Jared Leto Skeletor is great in the movie. Jared Leto has so little to do with it. Like, he was there on set doing the physical performance or whatever, and that's fine. But like, his face is all CG.
Yeah.
His voice is just really him mimicking like Alan Oppenheimer and Frank Langella, and the dialogue is basically cartoon dialogue. So it's really what it is that the entire team comes together to allow Jared Leto to not exist in this movie. And it's good. I mean, it's funny. It was heartwarming. I saw it with my roommate and a friend of ours, and in front of us, there was a guy with his kids, a dude who was probably close to our age, who had clearly grown up with it. And like, every time they do, I have the power, or there'd be another like little blorbo on the screen, he'd be like, oh yeah. And he was with his kids, and by the end, his kids were just freaking out. Like, they fucking loved it.
That's the best.
And
that's the best.
It is, like, if you go into it knowing it is a kids movie, like it is for parents and kids, it is not like an MCU movie where there's going to be a dark edge, really. It's great, and it really channels the spirit of the show and a lot of cartoon and other media. It has tributes to like everything, including like the New Adventures of He-Man, which is probably the most obscure thing I could imagine them like bringing in. So I am a huge
that was like the 2000s
Masters
reboot,
Universe
right?
fan. No. That is usually called the 2000X series. But New Adventures of He-Man was in the late 80s, like 88, 89, when the original He-Man line had lost its kind of luster and sales were flagging. They relaunched it as a like space sci-fi thing with He-Man like going into a new planet, and like Skeletor is more like Darth Vader, and He-Man has like
they do like
lightsaber.
A Star Warsy John Carter of Mars thing.
Right. Okay. Yes. And
for more on that, folks, definitely listen or read. Definitely watch the Toy Galaxy episode. It's really, really great. Toy Galaxy.
Oh yeah.
Shout out. Love
Secret
them.
Galaxy, as they're called now, I think.
We
had this discussion before when it's okay. You can still find their videos under Toy Galaxy. I think they just expanded to a lot more non-toy shit. But I watch it all the time. Dan Schneider, great host. Enjoy. I think that's his name, right?
Show. He said no.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Well,
but
it was
hey,
like
at least
before we had
anything.
It was before we had any episodes. So.
Oh, well, fair. Maybe we'll try again at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
I loved it. I think that some people are probably going to be like, why was it corny and funny? But like, it had really good action. It was very charming. I think if I were to compare it to another like kind of modern blockbuster, I would compare it to the D&D movie.
Oh, then I'm going to have the best time ever. A movie that needs 8 sequels. I want that movie. I want Jarnathan to have his own spinoff.
Jarnathan is one of my I really don't think I can say this without Jarnathan here.
One of the best opening, like, just jokes.
It's so good.
And sequences.
So good. That movie's so Chris Pine, best Chris. I think that's clear.
He continually proves that he is, because that movie fucking rules. Also, that's the best movie that Bradley Cooper's in.
Maybe so. I don't know. Wet Hot American Summer is really good.
Yeah, but fine. That's fine. It's the second best movie that Bradley Cooper's in. Which he probably would.
I mean, maybe it is the best one. I don't know. I guess. Yeah. Anyway, no, it's got that kind of energy. And one of the things that's similar to that I really liked is, yes, there's a lot of shit where it's like, oh, that's Fisto, that's Mechanic, and that's Ram Man, and if you can believe it, they're not a thruple, and like, I know, and like. Trapjaw's my favorite character. He has a big role in it. There's a lot of that, but also what it really is not so much like, oh, he said this. It's that every time they have a chance to use something from the source material, that's what they do. If they're going to have like a vehicle, they're going to take one from the show.
I have a question that is definitely a spoiler for me, as it just came out, but will not be a spoiler for listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Orko?
There are
That's all I need to know. That's all.
Orko,
That's it.
yes. Orko gets there is a great Orko.
Okay.
I won't tell you what it is, but it's pretty fun. There are 3 credit scenes. There's one at the sort of like beginning of the credits, one mid-credit scene, and then the end credit scene, which has already been publicly spoiled. If you don't know what it is, I won't tell you.
I don't know what it is.
It also made me go like, oh, that's pretty sick.
It does say, and I'm going to say this without having seen it and not being spoiled, it feels like it's got to be something She-Ra or Hordak. Okay.
I will say there is one cool Hordak Easter egg in it, which is that the comic store that plays a role in the like 20 minutes of the 2.5 hour movie that takes place on Earth is called the Fright Zone, which is the name of like the Hordak playset.
Cool. So it's so funny. I'm not like a He-Man head like that, but I have always interacted with it in stops and starts, and like obviously I'm friends with you, so I can't ignore it. And it is to me just such a better version of Conan the Barbarian. Because it's way more fun. And I love Conan. Don't get me wrong. I love Conan. But like He-Man is so fun. I'm going to, Vanessa doesn't listen to the podcast, but I'm going to blow up her spot. When she was a kid, she was a He-Man head because she said she had 2 boyfriends. And one was He-Man and one was Superman. And
honestly, fucking same. Still to this day. I've never felt more relatable to Vanessa, and like I already have always felt like we have a lot in common, as evidenced by the many shared experiences we've had where we've seen some kitschy goth thing and been like, ooh, at the same time. But no, that's incredible. He-Man is so close to my heart. It is really a special interest for me in a lot of ways, and always has been since I was a kid. It was one of the first things where it was like, oh, there's lore.
Yeah.
Outside of like comic books. And I mean, there are comic books. And that's the other thing. Boy, I'll tell you this. I would love to, and maybe if we ever do a Patreon, perhaps soon, we'll see. It's been talked about.
If the fans demand it.
Yeah, but maybe I'll do a commentary track where I do the annotated Masters of the Universe watch and point out every single Easter egg and character and reference, because there are so many.
Should we do Masters of the Universe 87 first?
Yes. Do you know why?
I threw it on the other day and I was like, this movie's awesome. Good.
Frank Langella, who sucks as a guy, is incredible in that movie.
Yeah, he's really good.
Like, one of the best performances of a villain in a film. He knows exactly what he's doing. That said, do you know why that movie this is half truth, half legend? I think there are aspects of it that are generally confirmed, aspects of it that are maybe supposition or speculation. Do you know why that movie is the way it is?
No.
Because supposedly it was adapted from the script for a New Gods movie.
What the fuck?
So Kevin would be Jimmy Olsen, Man-at-Arms would be Orion, Tila would be Barda, Gwildor would have been fucking Metron, Skeletor was Darkseid, the power of Grayskull was the anti-life equation. Fucking even the cop was Terrible Turpin.
Holy shit.
Now, is that completely true?
That feels a little bit like a fan,
a little murky.
Feels like a little bit of a fan theory that took on a life of its own because it kind of lines up okay.
Well, there is some credence to it, and I haven't looked this up in some time, so I could be getting a detail or two wrong. But I believe that 1 or 2 of the producers or writers had worked on such a script or had pitched it. So there is some nugget of potential truth in there. Either way, it's a really fun movie that is not a great He-Man movie, but as a relic of like 80s sci-fi fantasy, it is pretty fun.
I will say, so I looked this up briefly, and Brian Cronin I guess somewhat legendary in the comics journalism space, as far as you
Ironic
and
you
I
would
are
say that
concerned,
because
because
of
he's
Comic Book Legends Revealed.
well, right, exactly. Did write up a How the New Gods Inspired the Masters of the Universe film with Dolph Lundgren, and
Right.
yeah, it is basically that the director and writer, because they got so much freedom, they used a lot of reference, like they used the New Gods as a basis
As a
for,
template. So it's not technically
like, yeah,
adapted from the New Gods script,
yeah.
but there are a lot of elements adapted from the New Gods, which when you watch it through that lens, that movie is awesome. The fucking key, the cosmic key is a cosmic cube.
So wait, Jack Kirby once made a comment to the Comic Shop News that Masters of the Universe was the best New Gods film. And the director, Gary Goddard, wrote into John Byrne's comic book series Next Men to say, as the director of Masters of the Universe, it was a pleasure to see that someone got it. Your comparison of the film to Kirby's New Gods was not far off. In fact, the storyline was greatly inspired by the classic Fantastic Four Doctor Doom epics, the New Gods, and a bit of Thor thrown in here and there. I intended the film to be a motion picture comic book, though it was a tough proposition to sell to the studio at the time. Comics are just for kids, they thought. They would not allow me to hire Jack Kirby, who I desperately wanted to be the conceptual artist for the picture. I grew up with Kirby's comics.
I cannot imagine how incredible that would be. Jack Kirby's Masters of the Universe is like my fucking I'd die.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, well, speaking of niche interests, since we've been talking about yours specific one for a while, we have a shared niche interest, and that is Spawn. And we are in the middle of an arc that has been, that is 12 issues long, and we're halfway through it at the end of this issue. And our enthusiasm is still high, but flagging maybe a little bit here in the middle of the arc. I think that, you know, not to put too fine of a point on things early, but we're in the writing for the trade era, and we're feeling it. We're feeling
there's some growing pains here, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, this is a year of a comic book that is finding its way, and it's sort of finding its way on the page right in front of you as a reader, which is kind of interesting. A lot of comics. We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into this. We'll talk about it. I mean, look, we're 30 minutes in, so why don't Pierce, you go ahead and just hit me with those goddamn credits.
All right. This is Spawn, number 189. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present Endgame Part 5, written by Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin, pencils by Will Sportasio, inks by Todd McFarlane. Not digital inks this time, so I wonder if that's just a change in the credit. Colors by Jay Photos, lettering by Tom Orzechowski, cover artists Will Sportasio, Todd McFarlane, and Jin Han. No dedication. And at the end of the last issue, we saw Jim Downing fully transform into Spawn in the bathroom.
Pretty cool splash page.
Pretty cool splash page. While he yelled Sarah, as this woman, Sarah Johnston, is kind of taken him in after he's discharged at the hospital.
Yeah, she was his nurse while he was in a coma for who knows how many years. And so we pick right back up there where he's in the bathroom, where like the splash page we saw at the end of the previous issue, he's got like webs of like goo coming off of him, like spraying all over the room. There's bugs crawling in and out of him and filling the walls. And so we pick right up with a fly kind of landing. It looks like landing on Jim's eye, but we quickly see that it's actually landed on a mirror because he punches the mirror to smash the fly.
Kind of a cool effect. It's a little weird at first, but
it takes some interpretation. It's something that works better in like a moving kind of image, but it's sold well enough here. We got it. He's still calling for Sarah. He's like, what's happening to me? And she gets up, hears him calling, goes in the bathroom, finally opens the door, gets a key to open the door, sees that the window is all broken. There's bugs everywhere. And he has gone out the window. The window's all smashed in. And she's kind of like, just, what have you done? Now, the art's perfectly good. It's a pretty good continuation of what we saw before. I'm going to go ahead and say, because of the combination of script and art in here, the art starts to feel a little underwhelming at times compared to some of the previous issues. And I put that down to the plotting and pacing and the way that this issue is framed. Because from here on out,
there's a little bit of Portacio being told to do something and him executing it, and not, I think, in the way that we're used to Capullo kind of pushing back maybe a little bit and being like, I'm not going to draw it like that. And I'm saying that not knowing that that was part of the process between him and Todd. I'm saying that mostly in knowing Greg Capullo and having interviewed him a couple times, that he
goes his own way.
Back. Yeah, he will push back on a writer and be like, why are you telling me to do that? It doesn't make any sense. And he'll do another thing.
Working in the Marvel method, the way that Todd has always preferred to do with Spawn,
exactly.
Where the writer lays out a plot dictating what's going to happen in the issue, the artist draws it, then the writer goes back in and lays in the dialogue and any plot details that need to be spelled out. And it has its ups and downs. Here, I think it has some downs, and I'll tell you why. Because for the entire rest of this issue, it is very text heavy. And the text is all captions of dialogue between Clown and I guess another demon.
Yes, who seems to have taken on a human form and is living kind of under the radar.
Yes. And it is, boy, there are some really great moments in the art. Whilce Portacio's Clown continues to be maybe my favorite rendition of this version of the character, of the like squat, kind of classic, like Humpty Dumpty Clown. I think he really nails making him look weird, like beyond, like you see why he's Clown, but he doesn't just look like a clown.
Yeah.
And there is a sinister element that is really captured in the way that Portacio and Todd as inker render like the shading on his face and his hair and the darkness around his eyes. So there are some great moments here, but essentially what we have is Clown showing up at this guy's house, who is sitting on his bed, typing on a laptop, the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut, where the Mean Street Posse was from in the 90s in WWE. That is Pete Gas, Joey Abs, and Shane McMahon, of course. The guy, he kind of looks like Wong from Doctor Strange. Like he's wearing like the green collared pajamas, just a little bit, maybe a little like Grant Morrison actually in a way. And he's sitting there typing away. So maybe there is a little bit of Grant Morrison in this, because as we know, they paid tribute to Brian Bendis in, I think it was the previous issue. And there was the guy who looked and acted just like Joe Pantoliano. There's a guy in these issues that we'll all call out when we get there. It seems like a cameo. Kind of fun. Anyway, the guy is awoken by his dog, who is calling out. And he goes in and he
seems to have like a miniature pincher.
Yeah, a min pin. My roommate's mom had one for many years named Harley, who was like the most frantic dog in the world. Anyway, he starts to reassure the dog there's nothing in here in his, like, apparently his office. There's trophies everywhere. And there's a figure at the desk that says, "Sorry to have to disappoint." And the guy recognizes me. He says, "What are you here for?" And it's Clown. He turns around and says, "Why, you, of course." I just want to go ahead and say, so I don't call it out every time, every panel of Clown in this comic rules.
Yeah, it's good.
Every panel of Spawn in this comic rules.
Yeah, it's good. The problem with this comic is the pacing. It is the way that Portacio decided to interpret this script. It does feel a little bit more...
I feel like it's the other way.
It feels more full scripty than we've gotten in the past.
See, I think it's the exact opposite.
Really?
I think it's the opposite because, okay, when you look at this, here, we'll get into this. We'll just go ahead and start laying out what happens, because that'll be essential to us discussing this. And maybe you're right. Maybe there was some script laid out, but this whole conversation is so long and so repetitive, and it's really just recapping like everything that happened in Spawn up to this point, including up until the beginning of the Endgame arc, which is the apparent death and disappearance of Al Simmons for good. That's what it seems like, which led to the awakening of Jim Downing, who is now Spawn or becoming Spawn. So, it's just these two. It's just Clown explaining that there are a lot of demons who were left abandoned on Earth when the Flash, like the white light, happened, and there was people were resurrected and all that stuff. That ongoing plot line, it's pretty normal shit that we have had in Spawn forever, and there's just so much dialogue. If you look, at the bottom of the page, not the one with the cathedral where you first have like Spawn's eyes kind of showing up in the darkness, the one to the left of that where it's Clown talking to the guy, that bottom panel where it's just like the thickest, fattest fucking word balloons full of just dialogue back and forth, filling up this panel, where it's just like, man, we were doing so good with like the economy of language and captions and of dialogue and using those things as punctuation marks. Here, it gets to feel like, they have this conversation, Clown and this other guy whose name we don't know yet. And as they're talking, Clown is explaining there's no Spawn anymore. Apparently he doesn't know about Jim Downing. While they're having this conversation, while it continues, we cut to this classic shot of Spawn on the ledge of a cathedral. And like you get to see how Jim Downing's cape looks, and it's really just like shredded tendrils. It looks like at times when Spawn's cape has been almost destroyed. It's like super tattered.
Which usually is when his power meter is low, and we had the power meter come back and it is low. So
at 1.
Right. And so that is notable in this sense that he's not Spawn at full strength, and that probably lends to his appearance. One thing that I'm struggling with is I think that the book to this point, we're in issue 5 of a 12-issue arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the traditional, a trade at this point in time is like 6 issues. Nothing's happened to this point. Arguably.
Well,
right?
Things have happened. I mean, we've had villains, we've had fights, there have been things, but we are really still at the very start of Jim Downing becoming Spawn.
Right, but we've also had no exposition, and it feels like this conversation is meant to be the...
we're making up for lost time.
Yeah.
And does not need to be this deep of a recap.
I agree.
So getting back to the point that we were talking about where you're saying it seems more full scripted, and I was saying it feels the opposite to me. What it feels like is, we're going to do a Spawn action sequence where Jim Downing as Spawn is leaping from rooftop to rooftop, learning to fly, learning to use his powers, kind of a Spider-Man sort of scene, but of course a little more sinister. And we get a great rendition of that. I love this sort of like half splash of him like leaping into the air. There's a little bit of that classic 90s dynamic sort of panel layout to this where like he's breaking the panel borders. There's like an inset splash. I love the inking. I love the way his cape looks. I love the colors. It's all great.
We're doing a computer rendered lightning.
Even that looks good. It's really subtle. I really like this inset of Clown's face on the next page. But all that's happening through this is just Clown recapping more shit and telling this guy, he's like, well, I'm trying to organize the demons because I think without Spawn, there's one less roadblock than Mammon and the others have tried since Malbolgia died. And to me, it just feels like they needed an action scene. So they had Whilce Portacio we're going to do a training scene of Jim learning to use his powers. That's what it seems like was plotted here. And then they didn't know how to have that be anything or even have it without like a ton of like all these captions. So they just have this conversation continue over it. And it's like, we're not doing the dark night of Spawn's soul, where the bugs of the night and the earth. We're not doing that, but it is just the most repetitive recap again. And it's like, we know all this. There are maybe 3 captions of dialogue throughout this entire issue that really need to be there to sell this scene and this conversation. And it would be so much more effective. But as you said earlier, also, we're in the era of writing for the trade, and it feels like they just wanted or needed another issue in here. So they spent the whole thing dialoguing this interaction because they didn't know what else to put in here, or because it seemed like it seems like falling back on old tricks. It felt very forward thinking to have like sort of little dialogue. And also, there are places here where Tom Orzechowski, God bless him, is doing just the most
Herculean
work trying to get all these words on the page. We've talked about Enemy of the Pod, David Pepos, kind of offering up some guidelines about amount of words on a page for a comic, and this guy's putting more than that in a panel right now.
Yeah.
And it feels like slipping back into a little bit of that 90s writing because they're not really sure how to move this through this chapter without it.
The other thing too is that the plotting of what's going on with Spawn. So at this point, he's he's jumped out of Sarah's apartment. He's trying out his powers, but his powers are failing him. We get a kind of classic Spider-Man running out of web fluid. Yeah, falling, as of course the captioning is talking about free falling, right?
Yeah.
And he,
but the double page spread, the art is great.
It's great. No, it looks great. But he falls through a building, like multiple floors of a building, as of course the dialogue, the captioning says that eventually
each and every one of us
fall. I mean, it's a little on the nose here, plot like caption and dialogue wise.
Well, that's why I think they had to have added the dialogue and captions after, because also true. Like they put those punctuation marks there on purpose, you know. I also like this splash page of Spawn laying there on the ground. We have seen Jim Downing Spawn do this a little bit, where he's kind of like laying there. And he's laying in a hole. It says each and every one of us will eventually fall. And then he's laying in the hole, and it says temporarily creating a hole that heaven will exploit to their advantage. Yeah. And it's Clown just basically saying like, we have a chance to advantage of this absence of Spawn and at least defend hell and keep it, and maybe even take Earth.
And what Spawn falls into here is not unlike the Frank Miller issue of Spawn from way back when, which is there is a fight between 2 gangs and Spawn kind of ends up in the middle of it.
Well, I don't think it's 2 gangs. He falls into a drug den. There's like kilos of cocaine, or it's a drug deal, one way or the other. They're not fighting. They're doing either a drug deal or whatever, but it's when Jim Downing falls through the roof. I think that's just both of them pointing at the hole in the ceiling that Jim Downing has fallen through. See, this is where I'm talking about. The storytelling gets a little murky with the plotting and stuff, because it does look like they're pointing guns at each other, but from the dialogue we get later and the explanation of this scene, it seems that they are all drug dealers. They're like a drug dealing gang. And on the note you said about Frank Miller, this is really, really a very early Al Simmons type of action scene. You know what I mean? Totally. This could have been any early issue of Spawn. Jim Downing, they start shooting him. The costume kind of starts to fade, but then it comes back, and he just starts tearing them apart as Spawn. We get some cool shots of him doing like really savage stuff with his spikes and green lightning crackling out of his eyes.
This is the kind of Spawnified rats.
Yeah, exactly. We keep getting some of those like night creatures or whatever. And then we finally get to Clown and this guy again. And I want to say, first off, just a very quick warning. There is some animal violence, which I actually fucking hate. I do not like this. Clown says, like, you've been drafted. You don't get a choice in joining me. I'll be back when you change your mind. And the guy says, don't hold your breath. And Clown says, we'll see. And he says,
Now,
arrogant bastard.
Earlier he had asked him, like, oh, you won a lot of awards for your dogs. How many did you have? And he's like, 6. And the guy says, no, 7. And that leads to the punchline here.
He says, I'm not clowning around. Yeah, he opens, his dog is like sniffing at something in the cabinet. He opens the cabinet, and there is the head of one of his other dogs with a sign that says, I'm not clowning around.
It's the head of all of his dogs, except the one that he's holding.
Oh, God. Yeah, I guess it is. It is harder. Okay. I didn't really spend a lot of time dwelling on the panel, be totally honest. It was a little wretched looking. I mean, it is drawn very effectively, but there's only one piece of the dog here that is like really visible, and the rest is kind of all cast in shadows. I don't like that. I get it. It's evil, but I just don't like it. It makes me feel icky.
Meanwhile,
there's a cruelty in that.
Yeah.
Which is the point.
Again,
is the point.
Clown's a villain. It's fine. Is the point. You can do this. We're not trying to cancel Clown.
No. Oh, no. I'm canceling Clown.
What are we doing? Whoa. What's going on here? Yeah. Oh, you can't kill dogs? That's the rule now.
Well, have you seen
the Tucker Carlson SNL sketches?
No.
What are we doing here? What's going on? Like, just making fun of how stupid he is. Anyway.
SNL, I actually love SNL, and I've been watching it off and on for years. Sometimes when politics gets too intense, especially lately, I'm just like, this is probably funny, but I just can't sit and watch something that's making light of, like, it just doesn't hit the same way when it's too real. But, speaking of which, I'm going to Washington, D.C., later in June with my partner, who is going there for like a diplomat conference thing.
That's
because
cool.
She is like involved. She is a high level faculty.
And you're joining the cabinet.
University. Yes, I am actually going to be the minister of bullshit, which means not even the cool way. It's just like stuff. Like, bring me some bullshit, and I just bring some stuff, and it's like old stuff, but not cool stuff. But yes, I'm joining the cabinet. No, I'm going with her just because it'll be fun on some level. Mainly, I plan to spend the entire time at Smithsonian museums. I want to go to the Museum of Natural History as my number 1. Number 2, Air and Space. We'll probably go to the African Art Museum. There are some other ones. Anyway, back in the world of Jim Downing, he's back at Sarah's apartment. She's praying. She is praying to Jesus and God that he'll come back, and he finally does. And she says, "Oh, you're the answer to my prayers." She says, "Thank you." And he says, "For what?" She says, "For letting me know someone is listening to my prayers." And he says, "You're a good woman, Sarah. I'm sorry I worried you." And as she's holding him, his back is just covered in blood. Yeah. It looks like the blood of others.
Of
from
course.
The place. So we cut to the warehouse where everyone has been killed by Spawn, and who do we have here but Sam and Twitch showing up to investigate?
Hooray!
Sam explains, I took an inventory. We got 7 dead, all who look like they went through a paper shredder, another half dozen wounded, 30 kilos of uncut coke, along with the holes the size of a small meteor ripping through the entire building. They say no one's willing to talk. Sam says, "You thinking what I'm thinking? Seems like deja vu all over again." And Twitch says, "My sentiments exactly, sir."
I like Portasio's Sam and Twitch. I like him.
I really do. Good. I will say Twitch is a little off to me. He's not quite there yet. He's a little too Gary Oldman. But yes, I like him as they go on. I really like his Sam. Honestly, anytime Sam is drawn as even just like a sympathetic, normal human and not like fucking the Honeymooners or whatever.
When he's not the worst version of the Honeymooners and Fred Flintstone and like slipping on a banana peel while taking a shit and eating a burger.
Exactly. Like getting his ass kicked on a toilet or whatever. Yeah. Farting and stuff. No, because I like that we've moved on from him as essentially a punchline. There's a real dynamic here. Now, I will say this issue is a little better in the plotting and stuff, and it's still kind of dialogue heavy. It's still a lot of talking heads, but because it's not just fully recap conversation, it at least has some momentum. Now, I will say, we'll get to the end of this, and it's stupid.
Yeah.
So know that that's coming and that that's my preemptive opinion. We open with, what's his name? Mark.
Whoa.
Oh, God. You know what, Pierce? I'm so anxious to get this over with and get through these 2 issues that rarely I have very little enthusiastic to say about, that I forgot to tell you. So you know what? Punish me with those credits.
All right. This is Spawn number 190.
What the
Todd
fuck?
McFarlane Image Comics present Endgame Part 6. Written by Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin. Layouts by King Greg Capullo. Pencils by Will Portacio. Inks by Todd McFarlane. Colors by Jay Photos. Lettering by Tom Orzechowski. Cover by Greg, Todd, and Jinhan. And no dedication on this one either. It is a sick cover. It is so cool. It's like, oh man, wish Greg was drawing this book again. He's starting to round out of his like 90s form and truly into like a 2000s era.
I mean, he's only a little ways away from Batman at this point.
At this point, he's only 2 years away, and like, this is still
cover.
more. This is still more extreme than what he does on Batman. But
you can see the evolution of his style.
Totally.
Yeah, it's sick. That's awesome. And yeah, so as I was saying, this guy's name is what? Mark? That's his name?
Mark Rosen.
Mark Rosen, that's right. The newspaper cub reporter that we saw in the issue where Jim Downing fought Extractor, the fire guy in the hospital. I liked Extractor. Cool, just a cool classic kind of villain. Just a guy with powers, kind of weird. Reminded me a lot of a My Hero Academia villain. I think we said that at the time.
Yep.
Excuse me. And he's interviewing people at the hospital where the incident took place because he's been assigned to report on it as his first big story, really. And he's just getting information about, like, you know, what happened. Where were people in the explosion? He's talking to patients, security guards, cops. I want to say the art here, the 3 layers of art, Capullo, Portacio, and Todd, not really working so well.
Here's why
there is just too much disconnect. The faces are a little mushy.
I think what it is that we're used to Capullo and McFarlane being so in sync that throwing Portacio in the middle, I don't think that I don't know. I'll never know, right? We'll never know, but except to speak to all of them at the same time. But like, I'm so curious. It does feel like Capullo trying to put a bit of acting in there, but Portacio is not the best kind of facial acting artist.
He's not 2 very different and differently exaggerated styles.
Right. They kind of are exaggerating in opposite directions.
They're clashing in that way. I think you're right. And that's exactly how I feel. And I think Todd is trying to split the difference as the inker. We get some fun faces here. Down at the bottom, this is definitely Gary Oldman and what is it, True Romance?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Or, I mean, if not Sid and Nancy, kind of, but
well, I think in True Romance it's not True Romance.
Mohawk in True Romance?
No, he has a goatee. There's another movie that's not Sid and Nancy where he kind of plays a punk. I can't remember what it is, but yes, no, that's definitely a Gary Oldman face. And then who do we have right next to him? But Martin Scorsese. Yep, we got a cameo from Martin Scorsese. He is playing chess with Mark, and he's explaining to him that, you know, he is one of several people who were fully cured mysteriously of some kind of ailment. And what it is that everyone who was in the room where Jim Downing awoke when that explosion happened because Extractor was trying to get him was miraculously cured of all their illnesses, just like Jim Downing, who awoke from his coma. And Mark is like, he's finds out, he first talks to the nurses and he's like, can you tell me more about this patient and that have this miracle recovery? And they're like, which one? And that's how he learns there was, quote, an entire room. Every patient in the same room suddenly woke up devoid of any medical conditions. And it says the doctors are amazed. It's like some kind of miracle sent down by God. And when we get that caption, we see the winged sort of pseudo-angelic being who is a servant of the ones called the elders, who are sort of the beings that rule above and below heaven and hell.
We're starting to get into a cosmology that is starting to make less and less sense to us, because when you start with heaven and hell as kind of the main forces of good and evil, it becomes hard to go up and down, I think. And so now the elders exist as sort of like an extra layer. How do you feel about this? Because like, I think the problem that I have with it off the rip is this just looks like an angel. So we're not using like sort of new
the elders,
visual
it
language.
Seems recruit hell and heaven beings. That's what I seem to understand, is that the elders themselves don't have like a third type of agent necessarily. They're just that's my understanding. I could be totally wrong. But also I think it's kind of the inevitability of the ongoing escalation of like cosmic serialized storytelling. Look at the Marvel universe where there's like gods on gods on gods on gods. There's like there's all the Asgardian pantheon and their equivalents, and then there's the celestials above them, and then above them there's like the living tribunal and Kismet and all that stuff.
But the then above them. But the difference with the Marvel cosmology is that Asgardians are gods, yes, but they are sideways. They are not. They're not up and down. Like,
well, no, that's not always true. I mean, there is a hierarchy, and what happens is a new creator comes along and says, like, okay, well, now what's more impressive than this? And it's like, so okay, you have gods that are like superheroes, and then their gods are the celestials, and then you find out later that another creator has come in and said like they're the cosmic, I can't remember all their names, but like, or what they're collectively called, but like the living tribunal and those sort of like beings that exist, death that exists in sort of the actual fabric of the universe. And then by the time you get to 2015 Secret Wars, we have a whole multiverse, and in charge of that are the Beyonders, who are from the Omniverse, which is outside the multiverse. And you just get this nested thing where it's like, okay, well, we always need the next guy up. Al Ewing's Immortal Thor opened with that story of like, who are the gods of the gods? Danny Cates did Hulk, and it was, who is Hulk's Hulk? There's just only so many ways to escalate. And so it's like, I think it's the search for also the answer to the question of like, well, what created heaven and hell? There is clearly the mother of miracles who already exists beyond these realms and beyond these powers.
But then also, but who is also able to kind of become manipulated and maybe is not quite as powerful as we think that she is.
Interacts with those things. Well, I think that's similar with the elders. Similar with the elders here. That's the impression I get, is that maybe the Mother of Miracles is even connected to them somehow. I don't know. Again, I'll find out. This isn't exactly telling us. We're just seeing this angel perched on top of the spire. Pretty classic shot. You get a lot of great Capullo vibes in this one.
Yeah. The layouts themselves. So like he was specifically credited with layouts, not breakdowns, which leads me to believe that he maybe actually didn't even put all of those faces on the page, on that first page, that 9-panel grid.
You don't necessarily know exactly what that.
Yeah, like it's like, no, this is the layout. It's this 9-panel grid. And then we're getting a lot of these like big kind of establishing shot, a couple of cascading kind of maybe like slow zooms.
Very classic Capullo visual language that we've seen in Spawn a lot.
Totally. And, this angel is saying, something's trying to cloak itself or hide. I can sense it, but I can't tell if it's one of ours or theirs. And the lords will expect me to have those answers. We cut back to Jim and Sarah, and they are just trying to find out who the fuck Jim Downing is because they know his name, but Sarah's been looking into who that might be, and there's no records in all of New York for who that could be. And so he's
right,
like,
nothing quite matches with his specific known details, approximate ages and everything. And the hospital has very little records of him. What there may have been was destroyed in the fire and the explosion.
Right.
And he just doesn't remember anything. Sarah's saying she'll try to figure out, she'll make some calls around other hospitals, try to get some info. Jim says, did you search outside New York? And she says no. And he's like, okay, well, we know to start there. Maybe I was born outside New York. And then, she's trying to explain to him that she personally never saw his papers or anything like that. And he says he's kind of getting frustrated. It's a very Al Simmons kind of moment in a way where he's like, just so I'm clear, you're saying I was a patient in your hospital for years and no one came to visit or phone or check up on me ever. And that didn't strike anyone on staff as being a little odd. That's underwhelming. Now, that is a very Al Simmons kind of moment. But I will say, Jim Downing seems more self-assured in that way. He seems to be a little more like incredulous of like, okay, there's gotta be more here, where Al is in traditionally like, well, what the fuck is even going on? There'll be a little moment with that later that actually is my favorite in this two-parter.
And as he's getting frustrated, he is like, she kind of puts her hands on his shoulders and she says, hey, like, listen, I know you're frustrated, but we're going to figure it out. Like, don't worry. And she's trying to be reassuring, but and maybe this is more the K7 Letha or whatever this version of Spawn is, kind of takes it a step further, and he comes back around and grabs her by the arms and to the point where he's hurting her. And he's like, I could be anyone. I could be a murderer. Like, what? Like, you haven't seen anything? Like, this is so frustrating. This is bullshit. And she is alarmed. I wish we had a little bit more in the art to show her alarm. I don't think that Portacio, like I said, I don't think he really sells those big emotions.
I think it's there, but I think you're right that maybe there's a level of it that could be. She doesn't look quite as terrified as she might be. I don't know.
He's good at body language. He's good at body language, but not facial kind of like.
Also, I mean, there are times when his faces have looked great in the last few issues and where they've really been expressive. Again, I think there is just maybe an aspect where it's like reaching deadlines.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Greg to do layouts because we need to get this done quick, and so Todd isn't taking quite as much care with some things, like this panel of Jim going like, what am I doing, when he like lets go of her and he says, I have to get out of here. That's not a great drawing. Like, it's
not great, but because I wish I saw some remorse on his face. However,
just the whole thing doesn't have the expressiveness or the character that most of these issues so far have had.
I agree, but the thing that I like that carries through here is on that whole page, his eyes are blacked out. I like the idea that some of this is not him.
There's like a shadow hanging over him. We don't know anything about him yet, so maybe it is him. That's the thing, as he points out. He could be a murderer. He became a Spawn somehow.
We're doing the thing where we're maybe giving the book a little more credit than we did the first read through because we're talking about it, which is fine.
This issue has a little more to dig into.
I agree.
Than the previous one.
But he heads out.
She tells him to take a coat. There's a cell phone and money in it. And he's like, she's smooth. It's snowing out. I love the panel of him standing on the snowy street. That's a very Mike Mignola.
I was going to say, it feels like Todd is also trying out a lot of different inking styles.
This issue in particular does feel like a sort of different direction.
It's everywhere because I think he's realizing like, oh, fuck, this guy's not Capullo. Capullo was trying to do me, so I just tried to do what I always did. Now I'm working with this guy, Will Sportasio. He's a lot more angular. The line work and shadowing is and shading has to be a lot different. And so I do think that, yeah, that could be a cover. Like if you saw that as a cover now, you'd be like, wow, that's sick, you know?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. And so yeah, no, you're right. But then the next page, next sequence with Sam and Twitch, very similar to some of his older rendering.
Agreed.
There's more, we're seeing less of that shortened kind of style. And when I say shortened, for listeners who don't know, it means taking some of the lines out, making it a shorter process to draw, basically.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with foreshortened. There's a little less of that here. This page almost has a little bit of a Frank Miller vibe in it when we're seeing Sam and Twitch sitting in the bar. But in the previous issues, it makes you feel like maybe Todd was kind of slow through those previous issues because he had to really think a lot more about like, how am I doing this? And again, this sequence of issues, the last one felt like the writing was like, oh God, we got to get a script on this now. This one feels like shit. We got to get this thing drawn.
Yeah.
And so we catch up with Sam and Twitch, and they're having that conversation that we kind of quoted at the beginning where they're talking about what's going on. Sam kind of says, I'm not sure if Spawn had anything to do with it. And Twitch says, not his MO, not like that. And I don't think you know Spawn very well, Twitch. We have seen him leave literal piles of bodies that he has eviscerated with chains.
I think, though, that what Twitch is saying here is that this is odd for this version, like the last version of Al that he met.
That's fair. Sure. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think he knows Spawn as well as he thinks he does.
Sure, but Sam has kind of been always the one to keep Spawn at arm's length, whereas Twitch is like, this guy and I kind of get each other a little bit more. They've been through more shit. We both lost something, and like I want to say that I understand him, because even if and you're completely right, Spawn has murdered many people. He's turned them into ribbons before. But like, I do think that this is a little bit of Twitch being like, no, trust me. Like, this wasn't Spawn. Like, this had to be something else. If it was Spawn, we would know
it is
because
Spawn.
Well, we know, but Twitch here is saying if it was Spawn, we would know it was Spawn because Al would tell us. I trust Al. I think that that's what's coming through here more than anything is Twitch's trust of Al Simmons more than
because Al again went through so much shit with Max, his son.
Right.
So they're talking about how there may be ties to a cartel that's tied to the drugs. It turns out that there are some folks who have their fingers, some members of the Nortega cartel or Nortego cartel. Nortego, okay. The Nortego cartel. Maybe that's a real name, but it seems like the Magia from Marvel.
Totally. That always distracted me as a kid. I was always like, why? Just call them the Mafia. That's weird. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those separation of like layer of that was at a time when there was actually a lot of paranoia about like, if I say Mafia, will they come at me?
Fair.
Because the term was also fairly newly known. It's a long story. Anyway, I love this because, they say that the ringleaders of the cartel have connections to real people with real estate holdings, including St. Anthony's Hospital, the one that exploded. Mm-hmm. And I love this. Twitch says, the suspense is killing me. And Sam reveals it's St. Anthony's. And Twitch goes, whoa. And Sam says, right. So now we have dead gangsters in an incinerated hospital. We both know Nortega isn't going to lay back while someone's torching his people and his property. He'll start a war looking for answers. And Twitch says, and if Spawn's involved, he'll never find any.
It's the funniest line in the whole thing.
Just absolute roast of Al Simmons, like read that motherfucker for filth. If this was the roast battle, that would be the headshot. You know what I mean? Like just read in like a book.
Like these two issues, though, because they are pretty like exposition heavy on what's happened in the previous 4 to these 2, like the first 4 issues of Endgame, it does feel like we are trying to put pieces back on the board in the sense that this feels a little bit more like Jason Wynn. This feels a little bit more like the gangs that we met in Frank Miller's one issue. This feels like stuff is happening again. And we're going to get more of that as this continues. We get another really great panel of Jim Downing as well.
That whole page looks great. One of my favorite pages.
It's kind of weird how rendered Sam is.
And Twitch, well, that's what I was saying, is that it looks a lot more like some of those older rendering techniques that Todd was using a lot. You know, as you were saying, I agree. There is a lot of table setting going on. And in a lot of ways, it feels like table resetting. Like they're trying to reset things back to like the early version of Spawn where there's some mystery. We're not dealing with like God and Satan yet, but we know they're there. We have the elders now. Clown is back as Clown, but he has a new mission.
We have a not Angela. We have a not Nyx. We have / Wanda. We have like
as we'll talk about,
we'll get there.
We have but yes, they're resetting that status quo a little bit without trying to just go backwards, which I liked. I mean, we were talking about the elders and the evolution of these like powers that be and all that stuff. I think that the elders and stuff is an attempt to give Jim Downing his own thing that is still bigger and more cosmic than him, that isn't just going back to what Al did, that is like a step past that, but that can put him in the same position. And so as Jim Downing is walking through the streets and we're cutting away from Sam and Twitch, you know, Twitch says if Spawn's involved, he'll never find any answers. And Sam says, exactly, no one will be safe in this city, so we need to know whether it's Spawn or something else. Back at Sarah's apartment, she's praying again with her rosary. She's a good Catholic. When there comes a knock at the door, a man in black type looking guy, a secret agent in his sunglasses. Yeah, like a G-man kind of looking guy. Spook comes up to the door and is like, I'm looking for Jim Downing. I understand he was discharged into your care. And she says, well, he's not here. And I don't know where he went. And he says, you know, I'm not at liberty to say why I'm looking for him, but I can tell you that I work for St. Anthony's and his doctors have been trying to contact him. And Sarah's smart. She says, you're here on behalf of Dr. Baxter and Dr. Trunzo. And he says, in a roundabout way, yes. And she does a smart thing and says, well, then you can tell them to call me. They have my phone number. So tell them to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm sure they'll appreciate your cooperation, and leaves. We cut back to Jim, who has a wound on his stomach from where he was shot in the altercation. So we're kind of getting the impression that for him, healing is slower. It's not so much like Al, where he could kind of like stay as Spawn and then he'd come back. And there were very few times where he'd maintain injuries.
Well, there was a couple of times. There was a couple times though that when he switched back to Al, that was the problem. Is that like, oh fuck, you did sustain the injury, so you have to stay in Spawn form long enough.
Especially
which is also a very Darkhawk
where he was like half human.
Yeah, which also very Darkhawk,
which is awesome. Yeah, Darkhawk, America's sweetheart. The breakout
Spider-Man of the 90s,
1991. Yeah. The Spider-Man of superheroes. So Jim is sitting in this diner getting coffee, and the waitress says, if you don't mind me saying, it looks like you've had a rough day. And he says, I'd rather not talk about it. And she says, okay, holler if you need anything else. Then we get 3 cups of coffee later. Someone is addressing him. Hello, is it you? Wow, how many years has it been? And Jim is surprised. He says, you actually know who I am? And guess what, readers? We know who this is. Who should it be, Pierce? But
Wanda Blake. And I know that either Greg really drew her in this one. And then
that is a Greg Capullo-ass Wanda face.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like that is a Greg and Todd Wanda. That is not a Will Sportasio drawing.
It could be that Todd just redrew her face entirely when inking.
Yeah.
That's also potentially, there's a layer of separation and a layer of what seems like need to finish, like deadline pressure in this. So anyway, she says, I wouldn't say I know you, but we've met a long time ago and you probably don't even remember. My name's Wanda, by the way. And he says, Jim. We got another very, very Greg Capullo-ass Wanda face. And you can contrast it to the face on the next page that is very clearly a more grounded Will Sportasio face.
Wait, which one?
Okay. If you look at the page where it's just like her face is basically a splash page.
Oh, yeah.
That is some Greg Capullo-ass Wanda.
Oh, hell yeah.
If you look at the panel on the next page of her saying, look at me.
Oh, yeah.
That is a very Will Sportasio, more grounded style Wanda face. Yes.
Which, you know what? Wish that Todd had just redrawn it.
I don't mind it. I think it's fine. It feels disjointed to me to not have it one way or the other, but I wish they had just gone with Portasio's style.
I know, but that big Wanda face, it's so classic to feel like you have.
Oh, I'm not hating on it. Like it's a great drawing. Great. I like it, but it does have a little bit of incongruity. Yeah. Anyway, she says, I tend to remember when a person comes to my door and passes out. You looked like you'd seen a ghost, and that's in issue 3. Yep. He says, 5 years ago, we understand. We can go through all this, but what we understand is that Jim Downing is the white version of Al Simmons who appeared the first time that Al tried to turn back into himself. And instead of being, a black man, as he always was, he is cursed to have the face of Jim Downing. He can't return to his own form.
Yeah. We don't know why at that time. We don't know why now, but this is finally tying those threads together.
Well, I think it's just because at the time, especially before Malbolgia, if he was able to just be Al Simmons again,
why wouldn't he?
Malbolgia would have no control over him. He'd have nothing to lose.
However, we are seeing from this demon that we met, or potential demon that we met earlier with the dogs, maybe you can just look like something.
Well, if you're allowed to. If you're allowed to. Spawn could have stayed looking like Jim Downing if he wanted to just be a human. But
it would have used up his power meter.
Would have used his power meter, and he wouldn't have felt. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to wake up in a body that I don't recognize as my own. I wouldn't want my attempts to be myself to be thwarted by only being able to attain the exact opposite form in some ways, so it's a punishment. He's bound to a hellish contract as a servant to hell. That's how I always interpret it. It's just part of his punishment.
Sure.
Nonetheless,
we don't know why they're tied together, but clearly they have some connection.
And Wanda remembers this. Al probably remembers this. But Jim doesn't remember it because it wasn't actually him. This feels to me, though, Wanda showing up feels like when they do Family Matters as a spinoff of Perfect Strangers.
Yeah.
And then in like episode 3 of the first season, who should show up but cousin Larry Appleton and Balky to just check in on their old pals, or like the Simpsons spinoff Cavalcade when they have Chief Wiggum, his own show, Wiggum PI or whatever. And then the Simpsons show up for a cameo to sell it. That's what this feels like to me, is like, Wanda has a scene here. And he says, Christ, the fact is, I don't remember you or your house or anything. And what I can recall doesn't make any sense. I don't even know who the hell I am. And she says, look at me. And he says, what? And she kind of yells at him, just look at me. And he looks at her and his eyes are turning green. And she says, oh my God, you're one of them, aren't you? I see it in your eyes. And if you don't even know you're a part of their madness, I'm so sorry, Jim, but I can't help you. I just can't do that anymore. Not again. but I know where you might find some answers or whatever you're looking for. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry. And you get why she's here, to be like a connection to Al, to give him some Al information. And that's fine. But it does feel a little bit like, again, a little forced cameo.
I mean, we are getting continuity, though. I think that's one of the
true.
things.
It's not out of left field.
That's one of the things that I think this arc has been missing a little bit. Is yes, we've gotten
that's fair.
new Spawn,
that's true.
But last issue we got Clown. What's he up to? He's back. Okay, cool. Whatever. The execution of that, notwithstanding, and here,
right. I think it's the execution of this scene that's a little like, okay, they did it that way.
I think also it's a much more emotionally resonant scene for us as a reader, because the last time we saw Al, she says, "I love you," and he says, "I know you did." And that's it. We get nothing else. We don't get the aftermath of her life post Limbo, post Morana, post anything she did. We don't get the conversation with Terry. We get nothing. What we get to see is a Wanda who is okay. Finally.
That's true. Again, there's just a little something in the way it's thrown in here that's like, okay. But you're right. I mean, there is a story that is referred to here that did take place. This is not like totally nonsense. Yeah. So anyway, she sends Jim to Rat City, where he meets. Is this Bobby?
It's not. It is a different.
It's not Bobby.
It's a different night person. And
he looks like Bobby really in that one panel where it looks like he has a goatee.
Yeah, and then that's it, because after that he looks so different. I think he just knows about it, and what we are to
he's one of the other night people.
Yeah, what we're to take from that is that he's been around and he's aware.
Yeah. So he mistakes Jim for Al, and he says, the night person says, "Sorry, I thought you were someone else. Are you lost?" And Jim says, "You could say that. A woman sent me here, said I might find something." And he asks, "What was her name?" And Jim says, "Wanda." And the night people know enough about Al and his history, and have heard him call out Wanda's name in agony enough times, that he says, "Follow me," and shows him to the throne. He says, "It used to be his, you know." And Jim says, "Whose?" And he says, "The big guy," meaning Spawn. He says, "Listen, I'm going to take off. This place always creeped me out, so good luck with whatever." And this is my other favorite moment, is the night person just being like, there's a reverence for Spawn. Mm-hmm. There is a like understanding of Spawn that I think is endemic to that relationship he has had with, the people we call the night people who live in Rat City. I just think that's such an important part of his ultimate backstory.
Yeah. And it's allowing Jim to tread similar ground without it being a like complete just rehash of the same thing.
So Jim sits down on the throne and pulls open his shirt to show his stomach wound. And as he's looking at it, the blood comes pouring out and kind of curdles into the Spawn uniform around him, looking more fully realized as Spawn than ever, sitting on the throne. And
sick fucking splash.
It is a great splash. And
his next hands are so long.
It is great hand stuff. Todd, Wilson, Greg doing a great hand job as usual on this page and the next. As he looks at the belt with the skull on it, he looks at his hands, and as he's sitting on the throne, who should appear but the angelic hunter, whose name we don't yet know. And that is where Spawn 190 ends.
Notably, she says, "Greetings, brother. It's good to see another one of God's elite."
So there you know that there is something to do with God and heaven and all of this with the elders and stuff.
Yeah. I guess I can get kind of into final thoughts right away. As is usually the case, I liked 190 quite a bit. 189, I think we're both kind of similarly a touch cold on. I think 190 is good. I think even if the point of Jim is that he is one of Heaven's warriors and that
Somehow made
is
it a Spawn, and that's a different twist.
right, and it's not the K7 Letha, it's something else, and also that or that the connection to Al Simmons, which was already offered to Spawn to become one of Heaven's elite that he turned down. Now they have somebody who might be, more able to take on that mantle for them. That's kind of interesting. It does make what Clown said about not sensing Spawn anymore make a little bit more sense. If this power is coming from above and not from below, then Clown would have no way of knowing, right? He doesn't have the
Right.
intrinsic sense about it.
We had that sort of halfway dead zone thing.
Yeah. And I think I don't love the pacing, but I think the landing kind of works. It does just
Right.
feel, though, like this isn't Spawn. It's something different.
Right. And it does in a way. Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think I'm mixed on both issues for different reasons.
Okay.
I think the art in the first one is better in general.
Sure.
And I think the
except for the couple of Wanda pages, I think kind of rule.
And I think the script in the second one is better. And I don't think the art is bad in the second one. I think it's inconsistent. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not as good as some of the previous issues. I think the seams are showing of the artistic process a little bit, which, as we know, Todd's philosophy, and the philosophy usually is we got to get the book out. Mm-hmm. Maybe this won't be the best looking issue of Spawn that's ever been, but it will be Spawn, and it will tell the story, and there will be some bright moments in it. And there are some really bright moments in that second issue as well, Mm-hmm. And even in that first issue, I like the moment with Sam and Twitch. But yeah, that long caption driven like dialogue recap conversation is the most filler that this comic book has felt like in some time in my mind. And I think it is a casualty of, again, as we've said a couple times lately, writing for that trade and writing to have those 6-issue arcs, or in this case, a 12-issue arc, which would be 2 6-issue trades theoretically, or whatever it may be. We're in the rise of that very specifically, and I think 189 suffers for it.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I think 190, as you said, does a lot more to progress the story. And though it's also not super action-packed, we get some great Spawn stuff in it, and it has some impact that the other one doesn't have.
Agreed. There is a yeah, I'll get to this in recommendations. I just watched all of Widow's Bay. That throwbacky kind of like, hey, we're going to explain a little bit of stuff is a little bit of what that Clown issue's doing.
But it's just sort so of like much just recap conversation. It's just a non-interesting way to do it.
Oh, I will argue that the worst episode of Widow's Bay, which is a show I like, is the throwback, hey, we're going to explain some stuff. And
I actually didn't mind it. I think that so often in today's TV shows, the mystery box thing is like, you're not going to know. And even at the end, you're not going to know. And I was kind of refreshed that it was like, oh, you can know. You can know. And there's a story here. And there's still secrets that I haven't learned yet.
Sure.
By episode 7. So
I also think that 190 makes 189 better. And it specifically
In a
makes it
way.
better. It specifically makes it better on the very last page when she says, one of heaven's elite, one of God's elite. And you realize that the reason that Clown didn't understand, like didn't know what was going on and thought Spawn was gone.
Well, I think sure it makes the premise of that issue better. I think functionally though, just the terminally long conversation, it was hard to read for me the first time.
That was very TV show writing that would happen in a montage within like 2 minutes, but it was one episode or one issue of a comic book and it didn't work as well. So
a whole issue.
I agree with you that it was not an effective comic book, but I think I'm so curious to know as we move forward how we're going to feel about it with this whole arc in the rear view, because I think maybe it'll end up being like, that did some yeoman's work of like not a great issue, however, some necessary information that we needed to get, and like it maybe helped the rest of it. So I'm down on it, 189. I like 190 actually. I'm happy to see Sam and Twitch again. I loved seeing Wanda, and I loved her seeing kind of I love seeing her kind of classically rendered. I think that goes a long way.
It was a nice moment. Honestly, if that's her send off, at least for a while, it was nice to have that.
Yeah. And I love the tie back to issue 3. Like
I thought that was interesting.
That feels like a classic TV reboot thing where you're like, hey, we're doing the same show. It's set in the same universe. Don't worry about it. And then you get the character from the old show back for a second, and they completely abscond themselves from the current story, but they kind of help things along a little bit. And I think that's interesting. And it's a great callback to Wanda having been at Rat City, Wanda knowing about stuff. We've talked a lot about her not having agency, and this felt like her going, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that again. Good luck. And that was kind of cool. So, not my favorite issues, but, it
is what it is. Sometimes that's what you get in comics.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I think we summed it up. I think more than anything in a little while, there's a little bit of like, yep, 2 issues of Spawn to this. But I think that the second one did have some big kind of moments that felt like milestones in this story.
And felt like getting back to the book we're used to in a way. So,
yeah.
Well, before we go, George, do you want to recommend anything that's not Widow's Bay? Because I'm having a great time with Widow's Bay. That's my recommendation. If you're not watching Widow's Bay, watch Widow's Bay. Fucking rules. It is a perfect distillation of horror and comedy and homage. And I love it. It's really great. Matthew Reese, Stephen Root, created by Kate Dippold. But incredible.
Toby Huss in there. Most of America's character actors.
It's great.
I really like Matthew Reese in it. I like him a lot in general. But there have been a few roles he's had where it's like he's not doing anything new or interesting. I kind of like the guy he plays in this one. It's a little different. Anyway, I do have a recommendation.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, I was going to say I would cast him. I mean, maybe a few years ago as Jim Downing.
I could see it, sure. Anyway, I will recommend a book that I've started reading. I haven't finished it, but it was recommended to me by some folks, and I will recommend it on to you. It is called Men Who Hate Women. It's by Laura Bates, and it is a book about the rise of the manosphere and like incel culture and all that stuff and how it relates to what's going on. And not that we need any more exposure to that shit, but I find that knowledge is power, and that when we learn more about these things that are influencing us and that we're being affected by, then it's only beneficial. And it's a very interesting and well-written book.
Awesome. Love that. Well, this has been another episode of Spawnography. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you want to send us a little note, then you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. With that, for Todd so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten Spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn. Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.